Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Zhuangzi, one of the most influential philosophers in Chinese history. His life, his teachings, and his views on the nature of existence and the Tao are as thought-provoking today as they were over 2,000 years ago. We'll explore his journey, his most famous quotes, and the essence of his philosophy, all through a casual, engaging lens. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the story of Zhuangzi. The life and philosophy of Zhuangzi. A journey into the Daoist world. Zhuangzi, often known in the West as Zhuangzi, was a great Daoist philosopher who lived during the Warring States period of China, around 369 to 186 BCE. His life is not as well documented as some of his contemporaries like Confucius, but his teachings and the stories surrounding his life have become legendary. Zhuangzi is the central figure in one of the two foundational texts of Daoism, the Zhuangzi, which contains not only profound wisdom but also many stories that challenge our conventional understanding of reality, ethics, and the nature of the self. The journey of Zhuangzi. From humble beginnings to enlightenment, Zhuangzi's life, according to historical records, was relatively unremarkable by traditional standards. It is said that he was born in the state of Song, and although there is some debate over whether he came from a wealthy or humble family, most sources suggest that he lived a life of simplicity and contemplation. Little is known about his personal life, but one of the most famous stories about Zhuangzi involves his dream of being a butterfly. In this dream, he is transformed into a carefree butterfly, fluttering through the air without any worries. Upon waking, Zhuangzi wonders, am I Zhuangzi who dreamed of being a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming that I am Zhuangzi? This famous tale encapsulates the essence of his philosophy, the fluidity and uncertainty of identity and existence. Zhuangzi's journey as a philosopher was deeply influenced by his dissatisfaction with the rigid, formal structures of society, especially the ideas promoted by Confucianism. In contrast to Confucius, who emphasized social order and moral duties, Zhuangzi was more concerned with the spontaneity of life and the importance of aligning oneself with the natural world, or the Tao, the way. His view was that the world is in constant flux, and the best way to live is by embracing that flow, rather than fighting against it. Zhuangzi's philosophy. The Tao and the nature of reality. Zhuangzi's philosophy is fundamentally about freedom and transformation. He believed that, to truly understand life, one must let go of rigid distinctions and embrace the flow of existence. The core idea behind his teachings is the concept of the Tao, the ultimate principle that governs all things in the universe. However, Zhuangzi's take on the Tao is less about following specific rules or doctrines, and more about the intuitive understanding of the way things naturally unfold. In his most famous work, the Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi offers a series of stories and parables that demonstrate his ideas about the Tao. For example, one of the central themes in the Zhuangzi is the idea of Wu Wei, which translates to non-action or effortless action. This doesn't mean doing nothing, but rather acting in harmony with the natural world, without forced effort or rigid expectations. One of the most famous quotes from the Zhuangzi reflects this idea. The Tao never does anything, yet through it all things are done. This quote highlights Zhuangzi's belief that the world operates smoothly and naturally without human interference. The key to living in harmony with the world is to align yourself with the Tao, to flow with life instead of trying to control it. The Butterfly Dream, a parable of transformation. The Butterfly Dream is arguably Zhuangzi's most famous story. It is a dream in which Zhuangzi transforms into a butterfly, free from the constraints of being human. Upon awakening, he questions his own reality. I do not know whether I was then a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or whether I am now a butterfly, dreaming I am a man. This story highlights Zhuangzi's belief in the fluidity of identity and reality. He often used such paradoxes to challenge conventional ways of thinking by blurring the lines between human and non-human, waking and dreaming. He pushed the reader to rethink the certainty of their perceptions. Famous Zhuangzi quotes and their meanings. Here are some of the most famous quotes from the Zhuangzi. Happiness is the absence of the striving for happiness. Zhuangzi suggests that true happiness comes not from pursuing external goals, but from accepting the flow of life. The perfect man uses his mind like a mirror. It grasps nothing. It expects nothing. It receives but does not keep. This quote reflects Zhuangzi's belief in living without attachment, being open to whatever comes without, trying to control it. To forget the self is to be at one with the world. Zhuangzi believed that true freedom came from letting go of the ego and becoming one with the Tao. Man is born to live, not to prepare for life. Zhuangzi's criticism of those who are always planning for the future instead of living fully in the present moment. A frog in a well cannot conceive of the ocean. This saying illustrates the limited perspective of those who have confined themselves to narrow viewpoints. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you. Zhuangzi advocates for self-contentment and detachment from societal pressures. He who is content with his lot is a rich man. Zhuangzi teaches the value of contentment over material wealth. The wise man does not struggle. He is content with what is. A reminder of Zhuangzi's fundamental belief in the value of accepting life as it comes. The world is ruled by letting things take their course. It cannot be ruled by interfering. Zhuangzi emphasizes the futility of forcing things to happen and the wisdom of letting them unfold naturally. The great man is he who does not lose his childlike heart. This quote points to the importance of retaining innocence and spontaneity in life. The legacy of Zhuangzi's teachings have had a profound influence on Daoism, Chinese philosophy, and even Western thought. His ability to challenge rigid norms and his embrace of life's fluidity continues to resonate with those seeking a deeper understanding of existence. His influence can be seen in the works of later philosophers and even in the development of Zen Buddhism. Zhuangzi, also known as Zhuangzi, was an ancient Chinese philosopher and a central figure in Taoism. He lived during the Warring States period, around 369 to 286 BCE, a time of great political and social upheaval in China. Zhuangzi is best known for his philosophical work, the Zhuangzi, or Chuang-Tzu, which is one of the foundational texts of Daoism, alongside the Tao Te Ching by Laozi. Not much is known about Zhuangzi's life, and much of it is shrouded in legend. It is said that he was born in the state of Song, present-day Henan province, and lived a simple life. He is believed to have worked as a minor official, but soon turned his focus to a life of philosophical inquiry. Zhuangzi's life and teachings reflected his rejection of rigid societal norms and his pursuit of a natural, spontaneous way of living in accordance with the Tao, the Way. Zhuangzi's philosophy is centered around the concept of the Tao, Tao, which is the natural order of the universe. His teachings emphasize spontaneity, the relativity of human experience, and the need to live in harmony with the Tao Tao. The Way? Zhuangzi believed that the Tao is the fundamental principle that governs all existence. Unlike Confucianism, which stresses adherence to social norms, Zhuangzi's Daoism advocates for living in harmony with nature and the flow of the universe. His Daoism does not rely on strict rules or rituals, but on intuition and natural spontaneity, wu wei, non-action. A key principle in Zhuangzi's thought is wu wei, which can be translated as non-action or effortless action. It doesn't mean doing nothing, but rather acting in a way that is in alignment with the natural flow of life, without forceful effort or manipulation. Zhuangzi believed that the best way to live was to stop striving and instead allow things to unfold naturally. Relativity and change. Zhuangzi often used parables and stories to illustrate the fluidity and impermanence of life. One of his famous metaphors is the butterfly dream, in which he questions the nature of reality. Am I Zhuangzi who dreamed of being a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming I am Zhuangzi? This reflects his view that distinctions between life and death, reality and illusion, are not fixed and can be viewed in many ways. Freedom from social conventions. Zhuangzi was critical of societal rules, rigid distinctions, and the pursuit of status. He valued individual freedom and spontaneity over conforming to social expectations. He emphasized that true freedom came from transcending conventional ideas and living authentically. The Zhuangzi is a collection of stories, parables, and philosophical ideas. It is structured as a series of dialogues between Zhuangzi and various disciples, as well as anecdotes and allegories that illustrate his thoughts. The text is divided into 33 chapters, and its content ranges from metaphysical ideas to humorous and whimsical stories that challenge conventional wisdom. Transformation and metamorphosis. Many of the stories in the Zhuangzi involve transformations, such as the famous story of Zhuangzi turning into a butterfly. These tales suggest that the self is fluid and identity is not fixed. The limits of knowledge. Zhuangzi frequently questioned the certainty of human knowledge, asserting that true wisdom lies in recognizing the limitations of understanding and the need to embrace uncertainty, the illusion of control. Zhuangzi warned against trying to control or manipulate the world around us. Instead, he encouraged surrendering to the natural course of events and living in harmony with the environment. Legacy. Zhuangzi's influence on Daoism and Chinese philosophy is profound. His teachings have shaped Daoist thought for centuries and have also inspired various schools of Chinese Buddhism. His emphasis on spontaneity, freedom, and the relativity of experience resonates deeply in a variety of spiritual and philosophical traditions. His ideas have also made their way into Western thought, especially during the 20th century, when philosophers and writers like Alan Watts and Carl Jung brought Daoist philosophy to a broader audience. In summary, Zhuangzi, Zhuangzhou, was a revolutionary thinker who challenged conventional views of society, reality, and existence. His teachings encourage us to live in harmony with the natural flow of the world, let go of rigid distinctions, and embrace the spontaneity and fluidity of life. The complete works of Zhuangzi is a collection of writings attributed to the ancientest Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi, also known as Zhuangzi. The text, which serves as one of the central works of Daoism, explores a variety of philosophical themes through stories, parables, and dialogues. While the exact date of composition is unclear, it is generally believed to have been written during the Warring States period, around 4th century BCE, though much of it was compiled later. Zhuangzi's teachings challenge traditional social norms, advocate for spontaneous living, and emphasize the natural flow of life. The Zhuangzi is typically divided into two main sections, the inner chapters and the outer chapters, with some later editions, the miscellaneous chapters. It contains 33 chapters in total. Here is a general summary of the key themes and concepts found throughout the complete works of Zhuangzi. The Dao Tao, Christi, the way of nature. At the heart of Zhuangzi's philosophy is the concept of the Tao, the ultimate and ineffable way of the universe. The Tao is the natural order that governs all things, and Zhuangzi teaches that human beings should strive to live in accordance with this flow rather than fighting against it. Zhuangzi's approach to the Tao differs from the more structured teachings of Confucianism. While Confucius emphasizes social harmony and moral codes, Zhuangzi advocates for a more fluid, spontaneous way of living, where the individual is in tune with the natural rhythms of life. Wu Wei, effortless action. Key concept in Zhuangzi's philosophy is Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. This doesn't mean doing nothing, but rather means acting without force, without struggle, and without rigid control. Zhuangzi believed that by acting in harmony with the Tao, one could achieve effortless action. In this way, a person flows with life rather than trying to dominate or control it. The idea of Wu Wei is illustrated in many stories throughout the Zhuangzi. For example, Zhuangzi compares the Tao to water, which moves effortlessly, nourishing all things without effort. Similarly, the ideal way to live is to move like water, spontaneously, gently, and without unnecessary resistance. Relativity and the nature of reality. One of the most famous themes of the Zhuangzi is the relativity of human experience and the fluidity of reality. Zhuangzi often uses paradoxical stories to demonstrate how subjective and limited our understanding of the world is. Perhaps the most well-known example is the butterfly dream, in which Zhuangzi dreams of being a butterfly, and, upon waking, questions whether he is Zhuangzi who dreamed he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he is Zhuangzi. This story encapsulates Zhuangzi's belief that distinctions between life and death, reality and illusion, and the self and other are arbitrary. By recognizing the fluid nature of existence, one can free themselves from the constraints of fixed identities and rigid concepts. The limits of knowledge and the role of the sage. Throughout the Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi repeatedly asserts that human knowledge is limited and that wisdom lies in recognizing the limits of what can be known. He advocates for humility and openness to the unknowable, encouraging readers to embrace uncertainty. Zhuangzi contrasts this open-mindedness with the behavior of those who attempt to define and categorize everything, arguing that this leads to unnecessary suffering and frustration. The sage, in Zhuangzi's view, is someone who understands that the world cannot be controlled or fully understood. The sage lives with spontaneity, humility, and in harmony with the Tao. the reluctance of social norms and the absurdity of conventional. Life Zhuangzi was deeply critical of social conventions and the rigid moral codes of his time. He believed that much of human suffering was caused by the imposition of artificial values and societal expectations. In many of the stories, Zhuangzi uses humor and absurdity to highlight the silliness of pursuing wealth, status, or fame. He contends that the pursuit of such goals leads people away from the natural flow of life and into a life of conflict and frustration. For example, Zhuangzi tells a story of a fish caught in a net, which symbolizes people caught in the traps of societal norms. According to Zhuangzi, the fish in the net is not living according to the Tao because it is constrained by the human-made world. The sage, in contrast, is like a fish swimming freely in the river of life. Shittam. Transformation and metamorphosis, another. Major theme in the Zhuangzi is transformation and the impermanence of life. Zhuangzi often uses stories of physical and spiritual metamorphosis to illustrate the fluid nature of identity and existence. For example, in the story of the wood carver, Zhuangzi describes how the craftsman carves a piece of wood according to its natural grain and shape, suggesting that human beings, too, should align themselves with the natural flow of life instead of trying to force their own path. Additionally, the famous butterfly dream we discussed earlier symbolizes the idea that life is constantly changing and our perception of self is malleable. Just as a butterfly may become a man can become a butterfly, illustrating that the boundaries of life, death, and identity are all fluid. The power of paradoxes and humor, Zhuangzi's style is famous for its use of paradox, humor, and exaggeration. Many of the stories in the Zhuangzi are humorous, absurd, or nonsensical, intended to demonstrate the illogical nature of conventional thought. The humor serves as a tool to break down rigid, fixed ideas and to show that life is not meant to be taken too seriously. One of the most famous humorous stories is the account of Zhuangzi's interaction with a fish seller. When Zhuangzi is asked by his friend to provide a moral lesson, Zhuangzi responds with a humorous tale, demonstrating that wisdom is often found in simple, ordinary experiences rather than in grand philosophical discourse. Freedom and the Daoist nature of the sage Zhuangzi extols the virtue of freedom, freedom from societal expectations, freedom from attachment, and freedom from the constraints of formal knowledge. He contrasts the superior man, the sage, with the ordinary person, showing that the sage is not bound by conventional thinking, status, or even by life itself. The sage, in Zhuangzi's view, is one who lives freely in accordance with the Tao, without concern for fame, fortune, or any other societal goal. The complete works of Zhuangzi presents a profound and often whimsical view of life. Its teachings encourage living spontaneously, embracing change, and recognizing the limits of human knowledge. Zhuangzi's work advocates for a life of harmony, with the natural world free from rigid social conventions and rich with freedom, transformation, and peace. His focus on paradoxes, humor, and stories allows readers to see life in a new light, where certainty is an illusion and the flow of life is the only constant. In summary, the Zhuangzi is a masterful text of philosophical depth and spiritual insight, offering timeless lessons on the nature of reality, identity, and the Tao. All right, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into the life and philosophy of Zhuangzi. I hope you enjoyed this journey through his world of wisdom, paradox, and Daoist teachings. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like. I'm Mose. Comment and subscribe for more content like this. And remember, as Zhuangzi might say, the way you see the world is the way you experience it. So take it easy, and until next time.